All right, guys, next up in the sales cycle is we're going to talk about the budget. When it comes to the budget, again, it's going to fall in the discovery qualification phase, and it's going to be right after you uncover the prospect's pain. So what's going to happen in a selling situation is once the person talks about their pain, and they're going to tell you all their feelings and all their frustrations with their business or whatever situation they're in, then you want to qualify them and make sure that they actually have money or a budget to solve that pain. Because if they don't have any money and you're trying to sell them, even if they wanted to buy something, they just can't. So this is why the pain step is very important. The first thing I want to talk about when it comes to uncovering pain is you gotta overcome your fears with money. Now, a lot of times when we grow up, our parents tell us not to talk about money because they say it's rude. And part of the reason is because there's this negative connotation about money. You know, people just don't talk about how much money they make and all these things. The thing is, if you don't talk about the money, then the prospect may not even be able to buy whatever it is that you have. So you got to overcome your fears of money and get in the habit of talking about it comfortably. So here is how you're going to transition into the budget phase. First, you're going to summarize all the major pain points, and during the pain phase of the sales cycle, you want to get at least 3 to 5 major pain points that you can solve for them. Then you ask for the budget, and you're going to do it in the form of a question. And the reason why you want to have 3 to 5 pain points is because if you don't have enough pain points that you can solve for the prospect, then your product or service most likely is not a great fit for them, and they're probably not going to buy whatever it is that you have. So make sure that you have real pains that you can actually solve. Here's how you're going to ask for the budget. The first thing you want to think about is you want to discover if the prospect even has money to begin with. And the two different strategies we're going to use is using subtle questions and third-party stories. It is an example of a subtle question includes, "Hey John, have you thought about how much you'll need to invest to bring this project back to life?" So in this question, you summarize all the pains and then you dive into that question, which is, "Hey John, have you thought about how much you'll need to invest to bring this project back to life?" Another one is, "Sally, I'm guessing you haven't put aside a budget for this, have you?" And so, for these questions, it's a surface level question that gets the prospect to talk about their budget. They're going to be like, "Well, yeah, we did set aside a budget." It's like, "Oh, well, we need to invest $10,000 to really bring this back to life." So it's a subtle way to ask. You're not like directly poking into it. You're just, asking. But the main thing is that you reframe the question by bringing up the pain points and summarizing them so that it gives you context and earns you the permission to ask the question. Another one is, "Hey Jim, any ideas on how much resources you'll need to figure this out?" See, in this question, you're not saying how much budget do you have. You're saying how much resources do you need to figure this out. It's a very subtle, indirect way to do it, but it can get the job done. Next one we're going to go after is the third-party stories. And third-party stories are essentially stories unrelated to the prospect themselves, but you use another story that is similar to the prospect situation, and it's going to help frame that situation. So here's an example. "Hey John, usually when I work with companies like yours, they'll usually have a monthly budget set aside for digital marketing. I was curious to know if this was something you already thought about too." So by using a story from a past customer that's similar to John is going to be more open to telling you whether or not he has a budget. He might be like, "Yeah, we do have a monthly budget." And once you figure out that they have a budget, the next step is discovering how much money they actually have available. Again, the difference between this section and the last one is the last one you're figuring out, yes, they have a budget or no, they have a budget. And this one, we're going to get into the specifics of how much they have. So there's different strategies. The first one is ranging. Second, third-party stories. Third is combination of ranging and third-party stories. The fourth one is historical or future expectations. Next one is going to be the metaphor. And the last one is asking directly. So we're going to go through each one of these so you have a lot of different ways you can get a prospect to tell you how much budget that they have. First one, ranging. So an example would be, "Hey Wilson, if we were to ballpark what you're looking to invest in solving this problem, what would that look like?" So in ranging, I'm giving them a range that they can pick from. So another example of this is, "Hey Wilson, usually when we work on a project like this, the total investment is somewhere between $10,000 to $20,000. Do you think you'll be able to invest that amount?" So when you're giving them a range, you're basically setting the range to, ballparking or 10,000 to 20,000, and they're going to say something in between or maybe closer to 10,000 or 20,000. And so by giving them a range, range, it doesn't specifically ask them how much money exactly do you have available. You're saying, well, about how much if you were to give it a range. The next strategy is third-party stories. So here's an example. Hey, Sarah, I was working with a client a couple weeks ago who was experiencing the exact same challenges you were, and they were committed to taking care of this problem. They invested close to $10,000 to have us take care of that challenge. Would you invest as much as $10,000 if you felt confident we could help you here? Either Sarah's going to say yes or no, and then, you go up or down depending on, what her response is. But again, the third-party stories is all about using another person's example or situation, and then you're bringing on to the prospect you were talking to in that moment. Next one is going to be a combination of ranging and third-party stories. So an example would be, hey, Jimmy, I appreciate you telling me you can't review your budget for obvious reasons, but maybe you can help me out so we don't waste each other's time. Typically, when we work on projects like this, the client's investment usually falls around $10,000 to $20,000. Which end of the range should we focus on, or is this over before it even started? So what I'm doing is I'm doing a third-party story and referencing a past customer. Then I'm giving a range between $10,000 to $20,000 and making Jimmy, in this example, pick a number in between $10,000 and $20,000. And at the end, I throw in a little bonus where I say, oh, well, we're not even in that range, or is it over before we even started? By doing this, basically he's going to pick a range and you could work from there. But if he doesn't even fall in that range, then can really figure out what that number looks like. So next one is historical or future expectation. And let's go ahead and dive into it. Hey, Tim, last time you overhauled your entire system, what size of investment were you looking at? Do you expect to spend more or less this time around? In the conversation you have during the pain phase, if you knew that this person overhauled his entire system in the past before and he's trying to do it again, you could say, in the past you'd spent X amount of dollars, do you expect to spend more or less? And then he's going to say, well, more this time. And then you say, oh, what does that number look like? You're going to get the budget of whether it's more or less, and you figure out what he spent last time. Next one is metaphor. Jonathan, when you were thinking about a budget for this project, are you thinking of Little League, college level, or the major leagues? So in this metaphor, I'm using Little League, college, and major leagues. And what I'm doing is I'm giving him an option of the three. So when he says something like Little League, you could follow up with a question. Well, what do you consider a Little League amount? So by doing that, what's going to happen is first he picked Little League, and then you say, can you be a little more specific, essentially? And then he's going to tell you the amount that he means. Next one is direct. So here we go. Tom, I get the feeling that you've been burned in the past by revealing your budget to a salesperson before. Is that accurate? If yes, then I appreciate you telling me that. Is there something I said that made you feel the same thing? If no, I must have said something that made you feel like you can't trust me, or I would take advantage of that information. If that's how you feel, Tom, maybe we should stop here. It might be too difficult to do business with someone you don't trust. What should we do now? When I mean direct, what I'm saying is, let's say the prospect is really negative to you and they don't want to tell you their budget. And so what you're going to do is you just call out, if you feel it, call it out. Just say, hey, you probably been burned in the past before. And if that's the case, was it my fault? Did I do something that made you feel that way? So in this situation, you always want to take responsibility for how the prospect is feeling. Even if there's someone that is maybe bipolar or emotionally unstable and they're just lashing at you, always think of it like you have the ability to turn the situation around. So you could say, is this something I did? And if it is, then you could correct it right there. If they say it's not something you did, then you can say, well, maybe we shouldn't work with each other because maybe you don't trust me. They might say something like, oh, well, I wouldn't say I don't trust you. It's just that blah, 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 blah. So you really get down to the business of why people say what they say. So that's the direct way of asking for the budget. And so with that, those are going to be the 6 different ways you can ask for somebody's budget. You have all these different options. Go ahead and pick the one that works best for you and your style and the product or service you're selling, and then use it, see how it goes. If it doesn't work, try another one. If it does work, continue to do that. So now that we have an idea of the budget, let's go ahead and do a little brief introduction to price negotiation, because this is something that a lot of people, have trouble with.